Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of D.E.I. Deathwatch, where we chronicle the downfall and the doubling down of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am your host, Scribelight. It's Tuesday. Terrific Tuesday. Or something like that. Hope everybody's doing well on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Hey, I have a new toy I can play with now. I didn't know I could do this until a couple days ago, but I can apparently, and I'm going to test it out. We'll see how it goes. If it gets in the way. I can now show comments on the screen. So as you're talking in the chat box, the chat will now appear on the screen. Oh my gosh, I almost feel like a Twitch streamer or something. So yeah, there you go. You use this power wisely. But anyway, who's joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon? The Alexander. Good afternoon. Mike Savage. Good afternoon. Keeverdam. Hello. And thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the links to our friends Twisted Skipster and Angela Arriaga. Guys, if you take a look at the top of the chat box, there are links up there to the fundraisers. In particular, I'd like to highlight Angela Arriaga's home-based business fundraiser. If she can get up to $130 or so before the end of the month, that's still about 4 days away, she can afford the first part of her certification and everything for getting her business going. Or the paperwork, somewhere in there. I might be talking out of school. But anyway, she's very close to being able to start the ball rolling on her home-based business. So if you have the opportunity or the ability to donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share those out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the links. Somnamnul Nation. Hello. Advocatus Diaboli. Hello. K. Roberts. Good afternoon. Who else is here? Keel Soldier, hello. Let's see. Did I already say hello to... I did not. Unfair Ophelia, hello. Somnamnul Nation, hello. Lewis, hello. Or Louis, depending. Adiga Outlaw, good afternoon. Who else is here? Jaeger Pony, hello. Jaeger Pony, you changed your icon. It looks more 3D and effervescent. Sure. Your internet's favorite lunatic. Good afternoon. Jill Powers, the River Daughter. Good afternoon. Attack Alpaca. Hello. Who else is here? Anybody else? Is everybody in? Bridget. Hello. Juliet. Good afternoon. And I think that's it unless Blue-Eyed Scream. Good afternoon. And a Scanner Daphne. Hello. And anybody else I missed? Anybody lurking? Anybody in the future? Good afternoon. All right, we got a lot to get into today. Let's start off with a story that's not exactly DEI directly related, but at least in part it is, and this just happened earlier today, so I wanted to highlight it because we've talked a lot about Harvard University in the past. Trump administration moves to cancel all remaining federal contracts with Harvard. Oh boy. The White House is directing federal agencies to cancel all remaining contracts with Harvard University, about $100 million in all. Two senior Trump administration officials told CNN the latest barb against the school as it refuses to bend the White House's barrage of policy demands amid a broader politically charged assault on U.S. colleges. A politically charged assault! You guys, it's a politically charged assault. It's not based in, I don't know, maybe like, half century or more of civil rights laws, at least in part. No, it's politically charged. It's not law enforcement. It's not, adhering to the Constitution. No, it's just politically charged. That's all it is. Quote, "We recommend that your agency terminate for convenience each contract that it determines has failed to meet its standards," unquote, reads a Tuesday letter to procurement executives from General Services Administration official Josh Gruenbaum, who also signed an April letter to Harvard with a series of demands on governance and curriculum that the school rejected. The New York Times first reported the latest planned cuts, which come on top of $2.65 billion in recent federal cuts to Harvard. So $100 million is, pennies in comparison. The White House announced nearly 2 months ago it was reviewing about $9 billion in contracts and grant commitments the government had pledged to pay to Harvard over several years. Harvard should just be a government school at this point. $9 billion. Why does that college need $9 billion? And at that point, don't the taxpayers own that college? That's insane. Tuesday's letter repeats a litany of complaints against Harvard, including claims the university, quote, continues to engage in race discrimination in its admission process, the subject of a landmark Supreme Court decision, and shows a, quote, disturbing lack of concern for the safety and well-being of Jewish students, unquote. CNN has reached out to lawyers for Harvard, which in recent weeks has borne the bulk of the White House's ire against institutions it believes embody a liberal woke front. Yes, because as we know, acting in defiance of civil rights law is a liberal woke front. The university near Boston broadly has refused many government demands, including that it hand over foreign students' entire conduct records and allow audits to confirm it has expanded, quote, viewpoint diversity, unquote. But officials say they are complying with the Supreme Court's order knocking down affirmative action and have taken steps to address anti-Semitism on campus. Have you? Have you really? We should just own Harvard by now. $9 billion of taxpayer money going to these guys, or federal subsidies equating to such. Come on. That's nuts. That is nuts, I say. Who else is here? The Luke Skywalker 2, good afternoon. Robert Pincus, hello. JB, hello. Who else is here? Anybody else? Jen T. Maxey from the Great White North. I don't have any Canada stories today. I didn't hear anything new from Paul Chatto giving me a heads up on what's going on in Canada as far as like diversity and stuff. But anyway, so that was the first story. That just happened this morning. So I wanted to bring that up because Harvard and taking colleges to task for their policies and initiatives has been a recurring theme on this series. But let's get into what really caught my attention yesterday on Memorial Day. Now, as far as I can tell, it's disappeared from CNN's front page since yesterday, at least last I checked. But at the time, you know how if you go to like a news site or something, the little teaser headline they have for the link to a story may not match the actual headline they put on the story. Well, the teaser I saw at the time when I clicked on this story, I can't recreate it exactly, but it said something to the effect of DEI's biggest victim in the military may be white people. I am paraphrasing only slightly, and I was like, excuse me? Anti-DEI's biggest victim in the military is white people? Do tell. And so let's go over this story from CNN. The Pentagon's DEI purge ignores lessons from America's biggest military disasters. Now, I haven't read this yet, but my question is, are they still going to say that DEI is an extension of civil rights equality? Or are they going to take the fact that removing DEI actually re-levels the playing field and does not give special preferences to people on the basis of their race, which then means that people who had been receiving special preference on the basis of their race now feel as though they're being discriminated against? Let's find out. Some soldiers prove their valor in battle. Lieutenant Roland Christensen revealed his character on another proving ground with a split-second decision that would change another Navy pilot's life. On March 17th, 1947, Christensen gathered with other flight instructors at a naval air base in Glenview, Illinois. They appraised a group of nervous trainees who had assembled for the first day of selective flight training. The stakes were high. An average of 10 pilots per day washed out of Glenview. One of the trainees had another reason for nerves. He was a slim, black man named Jesse Leroy Brown. Was he the meanest man in the whole downtown? Okay, sorry. That was a joke. Keeverdam, thank you so much. Your mic is a little crackly. Sorry. Oh, is it? Uh-oh. Well, Let me restart my audio software and see if that changes something. One moment. Okay, I am back. Does the crackle remain? Let me know. Crackle, crackle? I'll keep talking for a moment to let me know if there's more crackle. It may have just been the software had to be rebooted. Crackle gone. Okay, I apologize for everybody listening from the top of the show. I did not know. So okay. Everything's good? Sounds fine? Good. All right. Where was I? Oh yeah, Bad Leroy Brown, meanest man in the whole town. By the way, thank you, Keeverdam, so much for the donation. I appreciate it. And not that I don't appreciate the generosity. Just want to make sure. But if there is like a technical issue going on, you don't need to donate to get my attention. Just can you do those little like siren emojis or something in the chat to get my attention? Because if I, out of the corner of my eye, if I just have text going by, sometimes I don't see anything. But if you like put a whole bunch of crazy emojis or something in there or something, I'll know real quick. So, you tagged me? You tagged me. Oh, did you? Oh, you did. I apologize. Well, okay. Sorry. I've become too used to chat going by on my periphery between this and Midnight's Edge in the morning and such. So, I apologize. I got to figure something else. Got to figure out something else. That's the closest you can do to a siren. Oh, thank you, Advocatus. Yeah. Okay, where was I? Oh, yes. I was talking about the Pentagon. Named Jesse Leroy Brown, the son of Mississippi sharecroppers, Brown was attempting to become the Navy's first black pilot. One flight instructor told him, quote, "You'll never sit your black in a Navy plane." Others dubbed him oil slick or called him, sorry, YouTube, the N-word. The other instructors ignored Brown as they greeted trainees and peeled off for their first training flights. Okay, and remember, guys, this is the not too long ago, 1947. All right, but Christensen approached him with an outstretched hand. Quote, "You'll be flying with me today," Christensen said, ignoring the snickers and glares from other white trainers. Brown snapped to attention with a hearty, "Yes, sir." Okay. Brown would go on to break the Navy's color barrier, becoming its first black pilot, which, at the time, was a significant event. But, in the all-around, it means nothing, because his skin color does not determine anything about his character. It said something regarding the society of the day, but anyway, he would earn the Distinguished Flying Cross. Okay, now this is where we start talking about something worth admiring for merit. Yes, he would earn the Distinguished Flying Cross for valor during the Korean War. A Navy ship would eventually be named after him, and his life would inspire a best-selling book and movie. Well, good for him. But Brown never would have taken off without Christensen's moral courage. These are the type of stories that have long helped make the modern U.S. military so distinctive. The military is the most racially integrated institution in America. Okay? This is not just reflected in numbers, but also in power. Although problems with deep-rooted racism persist, people of color have risen to the top echelons of the U.S. military. Why are you still calling them people of color? How about just, those who serve? Wait. Okay. That integration, though, goes beyond race. Oh, okay, so now we're going to move away from bringing up race when it comes to people dedicating and sacrificing their lives on behalf of their fellow citizens. Okay, that's great. I would love to get to that point. The military is one of the few large institutions left in America where citizens voluntarily form close relationships with people of different religions, socioeconomic backgrounds, and ethnicities, all in service of a common national purpose. Okay, I will stipulate. Combat veterans in particular talk about the brotherhood and sisterhood formed in battle. Sure. Quote, "The enduring emotion of war when everything else has faded is comradeship," said William Broyles Jr. Sorry, someone's calling me. One moment. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Okay. Let's try that again. The enduring emotion of war when everything else is faded is comradeship. William Broyles Jr., a combat veteran in Vietnam, wrote in a classic essay, quote, "A comrade in war is a man you can trust with anything because you trust him with your life," unquote. True. Okay, so now we've covered 1947, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and now some of America's leaders are telling a different story. Oh, are they? The Trump administration has launched a purge of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives throughout the armed forces and military academies. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says a culture of, quote, wokeness and weakness, unquote, has made the military less lethal. Your rejoinder to that is what? Hegseth, who wrote in a book published last year that, quote, America's white sons and daughters are walking away from military service, says he wants to restore the warrior mentality to America's military. Quote, I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is, our diversity is our strength, unquote, Hegseth said in February in a speech at the Pentagon. Well, do you understand what diversity means in this context, don't you? I don't know if you do. Elevating people on the basis of their race. Or denigrating. See, this is the thing that, again, for years now, diversity does not mean fairness in this context. Diversity means discrimination. That's what it means. Elevating some on the basis of their race, denigrating others on the basis of their race. It's no different than what the Civil Rights Act of 1964 sought to destroy under law. But anyway, the strongest rebuttal to Hegseth's argument is military history itself. Many of the nation's biggest military blunders occurred because there wasn't enough diversity in the armed forces. Really? Really? Well, let me tell you something. Who was this again? Yeah, John Blake. Let me tell you something. You know that mentality, that behavior that you were talking about here in your story, where that black Navy pilot was being denigrated by other pilots on the basis of his race? That's what diversity is about. It's just that you're denigrating people on the basis of their race, but it's probably a demographic that you don't mind is being denigrated on the basis of their race. Otherwise, you'd understand what you were saying here. But you don't. Let's see. How racism helped lead to a military disaster. Oh, do tell. You know what? I don't even want to read the rest of this story because none of this has anything to do with countering the damage and the insidiousness of DEI. You know what? I'll stipulate. I'll stipulate to his historical context of, being racist did this, that, and the other in the Army. I'll agree. I'll agree. Now, tell me, was Pete Hegseth wrong? Has the last decade or more of diversity initiatives within the military made us more or less effective? Why don't you counter what Hegseth said? He made a claim. It may be true, it may not be true. Why aren't you countering it? Bringing up historical situations where someone's discrimination led to a problem in the military. Yeah, and? Inclusive armies are more effective. Are they, though? Do you know what inclusion means, John Blake? Lowering standards, John Blake. You think lowering standards makes the military more effective? The DEI purge could hurt white soldiers, too. Here we go. All right, so this is what I was curious about when I first saw this article. This is what I was first curious about. There was another reason the American military decided to become more diverse after World War II. They saw what happened to Nazi Germany. Okay, people sometimes forget that Nazi Germany was built on and destroyed by racism. Well, that's one interpretation, I suppose. A racist demagogue persuaded Germans that other groups were inherently inferior. This is true. The Nazis' demonization of ethnic and religious minorities as well as political opponents led to the Holocaust. This is also true. I don't know that's why they were destroyed. I think they might have been destroyed by a combined effort of American, British, and Russian soldiers, along with assistance by resistance fighters in many other countries. I think that's what destroyed Germany, or Nazi Germany. I don't think it was racism. It certainly didn't make them very popular or effective in places, certainly, but I think a whole bunch of people gave their lives to defeat Nazi Germany. You want to talk about minimizing? Jesus. Okay, anyway, moving on. Many of the American soldiers who liberated the concentration camps were stunned that an advanced country like Germany could turn so barbaric. Some of them were black veterans like Leon Bass, who simmered in anger over the racist treatment he received in that segregated army. Then he entered the Buchenwald concentration camp. What does this have to do with DEI and white people? What? I'm skimming now because this is all just nonsense. But in recent years, the desire for common ground seems to have evaporated. Our schools and communities remain widely segregated. Yeah. Tell me about affinity groups, racial affinity groups in public schools. Tell me about those. Tell me about DEI programs and critical race theory. Tell me about the 1619 Project. You want to talk about segregation in America's schools and communities? Diversity programs are being driven out of academia and corporate America. Good! People are self-sorting in political enclaves where they have little contact with people with different opinions. And that's a result of a lack of DEI. Hey, John Blake, I don't know if you noticed something over the course of, say the last 9 years or so, at least, that the tribalization of this country started while DEI was in full swing. The military is a last bastion of integration in America. Really? Really? After you just told us that it has been one of the most integrated institutions in our country for however many decades? Okay, not even college and pro sports teams approach its commitment to the concept. Okay, well, wasn't it doing that before DEI? Communities with large military installations dominate the list of least segregated metropolitan areas of the U.S. There are higher rates of intermarriage among military members. Oh, okay. Are you more concerned with a breeding program now? That diversity serves a vital military interest. How are you defining diversity again? Okay. Some of the country's leading military leaders recently said, how many is some? Who said that? Why aren't you quoting them? That diversity serves a vital military interest, some of the country's leading military leaders recently said. Okay, 35 retired senior defense officials, including 4 former chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, signed an amicus brief in 2022 supporting diversity as vital for the nation's armed services. Oh, wow. Uh-huh. And what exactly do you think is going to happen? Quote, history has shown that placing a diverse armed forces under the command of a homogenous leadership is a recipe for internal resentment, discord, and violence, they wrote. Homogenous leadership. And you're basing that on what exactly? You can't quite get away from it, can you? You're still valuing race. That diversity is also needed more than ever because of another factor. In recent years, the military has faced a severe recruiting shortage. It has, hasn't it? And what has happened over the last, say 6 months or so in regards to recruiting numbers? Do you want to talk about that? The Army, for example, missed its recruitment goal by nearly 25% in 2022 and 2023. Really? Well, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs were in full swing under the Biden administration in the military. So why would that be? 2022 and 2023? Well, why wasn't diversity, equity, and inclusion making those numbers go gangbusters? I'm confused. An uptick in recruiting that began last summer. Oh, what happened last summer has carried over into 2025 so far. Okay, so what you're telling me is that when Biden was in charge, recruitment was down. And since are you going to tell us when this began last summer? Oh, I don't have the article in front of me. If last summer was in the aftermath of Joe Biden dropping out of the race, I really have to ask. But a fundamental challenge remains. An all-volunteer force must consistently attract large numbers of people of color if it's going to remain effective. John Blake, what is the value of melanin count for military effectiveness? No, really, I want to know, what is the value of melanin count towards military effectiveness? Please, I would love to know. Here's another intangible reason why diversity makes the military stronger. Some of the biggest beneficiaries of this diversity are white men. They may become hidden casualties in this war on wokeness. Really? Okay, so from the time where the headline was, where was it? How far have we come since that headline? Inclusive armies are more effective. Reason of the disaster. Where did that go? Did I just miss that entire headline? Inclusive armies are more effective. Yeah, white soldiers too. Okay, so here it is. We're on page 10, and it took until... Took until page 13. Took 3 pages to get to telling us what the headline promised. Okay. Diversity not only increases the chance that they will succeed in war zones. That white people will succeed in war zones? Why? It teaches them how to negotiate differences with someone who is different, a vital skill for preserving a multiracial and multicultural democracy. Yes, because as we know, everyone, white people are inherently racist, xenophobic, and afraid of anything that doesn't look just like them, as we know. Well, I should say as John Blake knows. As John Blake knows, white people inherently lack any interpersonal skills beyond anyone that doesn't resemble them on the most surface level of aesthetics. I mean, he must be right. I mean, he would know. Bibby, I'm sure this is someone that was quoted earlier. Bibby says black Marines swelled with pride when they saw his Captain Bars. Okay, but it was also important that white soldiers saw him. There are numerous historical examples of white soldiers who harbored racist attitudes being transformed by serving with and fighting alongside black soldiers. Yes, because obviously white people need to be taught a lesson. They need to have the inherent racism weeded out of them. Because as we know, white people are just inherently racist. They don't know how to interact with people who don't look like them. Whereas anyone who isn't white has an infinite bank of knowledge and experience they can draw from due to the mystic chords of memory or something. Quote, we don't talk enough about how much it means to young white men who have never seen a black captain to understand that I'm a part of this damn story, Bibby says. Quote, it's important that they see a black and women officers and they understand that we're all part of the same team, unquote. Yeah, because again, white people inherently racist. Black people not inherently racist. Marlantis, I'm assuming it again someone who was quoted earlier, says he has a comfort level with black people he probably wouldn't have otherwise if not for his experience in the Marines. He said he met all sorts of soldiers who expanded his perspective. Wow, that's good for Marlantis. And obviously, whoever that is represents everyone who, I guess, looks like him in some surface level way. Quote, we had an artillery forward observer whose great-grandfather owned Hilton Head, says Marlantis of the popular South Carolina tourist destination. He was rich, and he was in there with us eating cold beans and being miserable while trying to save our ass by bringing in artillery, unquote. Yes, war is and can be a great equalizer. It's true. And then he goes on to talk about more friendships forged during war. And what did any of that have to do with disproving that DEI has made the military weaker? Okay, so Hegseth says the DEI programs have made the military weaker. John Blake, the author of this article, says, yeah, recruitment was down 25% 2022, 2023, and then suddenly had an uptick in the summer 2024. I wonder what happened then. And of course, the numbers have gone up since then. And his point is what? This entire article says nothing, proves nothing, makes no real argument against getting rid of DEI. And look, and most of the stories that he cited from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, this is all before diversity, equity, inclusion ever existed in the way that he is attempting to say that they're equitable with just integration and doing away with segregation in the military on the basis of race. But no, we need DEI, guys. DEI is great. Just never mind those recruitment numbers. That was quite a thing to see, I gotta say, on Memorial Day. Take advantage of Memorial Day to push this stuff. It was great. It was great. Let's see. Read by Nature. The RAF tried implementing DEI initiatives, and those were found to be discriminatory and illegal, if I recall. You know, I'm actually, if we're talking about, it's still called, is it called the Royal Air Force in Canada as well? Anyway, if it was Canada, or certainly if it was the UK, I'd be amazed if a United Kingdom military decided that the DEI was bad, given how that country and its inclusions have been operating lately. Brian Moore said, diversity of thought, not diversity of skin tone with everyone in groupthink. Yeah. Diversity of ability, experience, education. I mean, actual background, socioeconomic or otherwise, sure. But stop valuing race. We were supposed to be moving past this. Advocates Diabli, to follow their logic, if fewer black men are forced to go to fight and die, more white ones will die. Thus, they are the hidden victims. I guess it's all about the percentages. I guess they're right. We need more bullet sponges, guys. You're missing out on all your bullet sponges. I'm not reducing the veterans and the military personnel I'm talking about to mere cannon fodder. No, for the sake of trying to get a one-up on white people. Read by Nature, if you swap out the military leadership to meet quotas, the mismanagement will skyrocket. As we've seen, if you start putting people into leadership positions, not on the basis of their ability, but simply on the basis to fulfill a demographic split or to try to balance the numbers or to fix the wrongs of history, you're not going to end up with the best choice. Put people in positions they have earned and deserve. That's it. Doesn't matter what they look like. Jill Powers, the River Daughter. The Air Force is the worst, in my honest opinion. I'll have to take the opinions of those within to know better than I, because I've never been in the military. My father was in the Air Force in Vietnam. My grandfather on my mom's side was in the Air Force in World War II. My father's father was in the Merchant Marine during World War II. And little bits and pieces of his history I'm still not quite clear on. But anyway. They are called the Flying Maples. Are they? Navy and Air Force are Royal. Okay. The Royal. I wasn't sure if the Royal extended to Canadian as well, but I guess that's probably the Canadian Air Force. Anyway, so there you go. That was one of the Memorial Day. Let's take advantage of Memorial Day from CNN to push DEI is really necessary, guys, without proving to us why. I just get so frustrated when they try to equate DEI with actual historical changes in culture and initiatives that deal with actual racism and try to do away with actual racism. And then they say, but DEI needs to be around because obviously DEI isn't racism. DEI is the opposite of racism. Now, let's move on to some more What else shall we do? Let's do Ohio State. Let's talk about Ohio State for a second here. Ohio State College of Medicine sunsets DEI division and staff. Oh boy, Columbus, Ohio. Ohio State's College of Medicine will sunset its Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion division and staff in the next month, a spokesperson confirmed. OSU's College of Medicine is closing its Office of Diversity and Inclusion, effective Saturday, and removing its vice chairs for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion by June 27th. College of Medicine spokesperson Serena Smith confirmed the closures, citing state and federal crackdowns on DEI programs. Quote, over the past several months, those of us in higher education have found ourselves at the center of several vigorous debates at both the state and national levels, Smith said. Quote, the current state and federal landscape made it a near certainty that we would need to make changes to the ways we have historically gone about our diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI efforts. Well, now I'm concerned that it's like the way we have gone about just means we're going to be changing deck chairs on the Titanic and not telling anybody. Smith said the college is shuttering its offices and staff to be compliant with state law. Senate Bill 1, or the Advanced Higher Education Act, goes into effect on June 26 and bars public Ohio universities from having DEI programming on campus. And again, I'll say it every show just to remind and just for the sake of anybody who's joining for the first time. I do not agree with these state initiatives and statutes that are going after quote-unquote DEI. It is counterproductive. It allows for petulant compliance and confusion, whether it's legitimate or performative. All you have to say is, we are going to audit your institution for compliance with civil rights laws from 1964. If you are in compliance, great. If you're not, you will be penalized. So if you want to get to it before we do, take a look at your programs. By the time we get to you, if you are still doing it, you will be losing taxpayer money. The end. Goodbye. That's all they should be doing. They don't need to keep passing this new legislation. Anyway, it's been said. Smith said the university is working with affected staff to find other jobs at Ohio State where they can. What else does a DEI expert do? And where would you put such a person? If such a person was so much a zealot on this subject, where would you feel safe placing this person within the campus again? The university is also providing support services to help those affected by the decision, and Smith said she knows the transition will be disappointing for many. Hey, anybody in the chat ever been the victim of downsizing before? You ever had your department closed down, or you know, the company decided to move offices somewhere and you just happened to get caught up in the rush of it all? Yeah. Oh no. Oh gosh. It's so disappointing. I mean, it doesn't make it any more fun to experience, but I don't know. I just it's hard for me to conjure up a whole lot of sympathy in situations like this. Quote, our priority is to provide the resources our faculty, staff, and learners need. Learners. Just say students. Learners sounds like some kind of Jedi temple stuff. Why not say students? Learners. Sounds like some commie BS. Anyway, our priority is to provide the resources our faculty, staff, and learners need to be successful. Really? Then why did you fund a DEI program all these years? How we go about that will need to change, but our commitment will not, Smith said. That doesn't really sound like you're getting rid of your DEI philosophy. Quote, we will continue to celebrate diverse backgrounds and ideas and uphold academic freedom, which defines the excellence of American universities. Does it, though? Ohio State also recently launched a webpage dedicated to the university's compliance with Senate Bill 1. OSU said it is engaging groups of students, you mean learners, staff and faculty across all campuses to best decide how to implement the law's requirements. Well, I have an idea. I know it's a crazy one. I have a crazy one. Okay, how about you look at Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Anything that thing says you are not allowed to do, don't do it. It's pretty simple. I know. It's a big hill to climb for college colleges and universities. I get it. You know, you're a school of medicine, not a school of law. I understand. It's tough. It's tough. Maybe I can put it into a medical context for you. DEI is a cancer. Cut it out of your system. There you go. Does that help? I think that might help. Maybe just a little bit. Also, Molly Okami is here. Hello, Molly Okami. Anybody else I missed in the meantime? I don't think so. I think I said hello to everybody. Did I say hello to everybody? If I did, I feel accomplished. So there we go. Let's see. Advocatus Diaboli. We will enforce academic freedom by instituting policies that punish people who do, think, or say what we tell them they cannot. That's true. Yeah, imagine going onto one of these college campuses and saying DEI is terrible and you should get rid of it. Imagine saying that sometime within the last 5 or 6 years. What would have happened then? Do you think? What do you think what do you think would happen to that student or that teacher if a professor came out and said something similar? Kiro Soldier sent you a tag earlier in the chat. Okay, I think part of the problem is that the tags don't show up on the StreamYard chat box, so I don't see them as readily. Let me move over to this and see. Let's see. Okay, I can't scroll up to it now, but the Nazis copied a lot of their policies from Democrats. Probably. I mean, you're talking about the most extreme left-wing kind of thinking. Yeah. Kiefer Dam. Yes. Hello. Are you waving at me, or is this a notice that something's going wrong? I can't tell. Maybe just hello. And Kay Scholl is here. All right. Let's move on. We have a couple more stories here. Let's talk about corporate America. Corporate America's retreat from DEI has eliminated thousands of jobs. Oh my gosh, guys. The giant infrastructure of a grift that has been allowed to grow exponentially over the last decade, now suddenly falling down, has resulted in a whole bunch of people who profited off of nonsense to lose their jobs. Uh-oh. Let's find out. Candace Birdsong Williams, that's an interesting name, has filled the front room of her Okay. And, I can understand now why Trump is suing NPR. It's all the pop-ups. I can't get through one paragraph of a story without being interrupted twice. We'll see if it happens again. Candace Birdsong Williams. That really sounds familiar. That name sounds familiar to me. Has filled the front room of her sunlit North Carolina home with sources of inspiration. Overflowing plants and photos of her 3 daughters share space with a brightly painted sign of a favorite Bible verse. Quote, God is within her, she will not fall, unquote. Then there are the books, stacks of memoirs, business advice, and professional guides to the field now known as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI. That's where Birdsong Williams, who generally radiates a calming optimism, spent the last 18 years of her career. Holy cats! 18 years? Man. 18 years working within a complete grift of an industry. That's great. But her voice breaks as she picks up one textbook called simply The Chief Diversity Officer. The title represents the pinnacle of her once hot profession and the promotion she was working toward before she was laid off in August and found the DEI job market had turned into a toxic wasteland. Oh no. Quote, I was hoping that was going to be the next role, she says, prior to the current political climate. Oh my gosh, guys. The current political climate. She spent 18 years mastering skills that improve nothing, produce nothing. And now... the current political climate. As she approached her 50th birthday last summer, Birdsong Williams was pretty close to the top of her chosen field. Her most recent job title was, quote, Global Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, unquote. But now, quote, Chief Diversity Officer, unquote, seems like a promotion that will never happen for her and for thousands of U.S. workers. I think I have a tiny violin playing somewhere. The anti-DEI political climate Birdsong Williams refers to has been slowly bubbling up for years. Yeah, I know. It's been a long time coming. A lot of years have gone by since this started. You might almost say, I don't know, like maybe 1964 or thereabouts. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, guys. Well, it's the current political climate. Bubbling up for years, even before President Trump was reelected. Well, how can that be? 9 out of every 10 articles I read tell me that the DEI backlash only started this year. How is that possible? I don't know. Also, Ames S. Hello. Or Amses? Amses. You let me know. Which way do I pronounce that? Anybody else I missed in the meantime? I don't think so. Birdsong. WTF is the DEI name. Sounds like some retarded name Hollywood people give their children. I've heard Birdsong as a last name before. I'm pretty sure I had either a cousin or some relative in Texas who had the last name Birdsong. So it's not unfamiliar to me. But it should be hyphenated because that's 2 last names. But anyway, let's see. Even before President Trump was reelected and set things to a hard boil by immediately signing executive orders banning what he calls illegal DEI. Yes, only he calls DEI illegal, not long-established civil rights laws. No, only him. I held out some hope for a second there that NPR was going to be fair and balanced. Now scores of employers are in all-out retreat from anything adjacent to the word diversity, including the experienced DEI specialists. DEI specialists who were once in high demand. I could have been a DEI specialist. I could have been a contender. I could have taken all of my absorbed knowledge of DEI from 2016 through 2018 and hung out a shingle and started my own DEI consulting business, and I could have cleaned up because I tell you what, between 2019 and 2023, it was just a boomtown, especially after the summer of 2020. And we all know what happened then. George Flurd. For example, just this month, Verizon announced it was ending many of its DEI policies as it sought the Federal Communication Commission's blessing for a $20 billion merger. We talked about that in a previous DEI Deathwatch stream. It promised the agency that its Human Resources Department, quote, will no longer have a team or any individual roles focused on DEI, unquote. Well, good. Well, good. Maybe you're actually getting back into compliance with long-standing civil rights law. This retreat is decimating the job market for people like Birdsong Williams. Since early 2023, what happened in early 2023? Oh, was that the Supreme Court decision? U.S. employers have eliminated more than 2,600 jobs with words including diversity or DEI in the titles or descriptions, according to a data analysis conducted for NPR by the workforce analytics firm Revelio Labs. Well, golly, I guess then they really weren't that valuable. Right? I mean, if DEI was always the golden goose, if DEI increased innovation and output and profits, then I guess it was a reasonable cut. It wasn't anything that was going to hamper the company. Kiro Soldier, thank you so much. Well, St. Flurd can celebrate 5 years of sobriety. I guess that's true. Yeah, we just had that anniversary. Was it yesterday, the day before? Yeah. I saw it. I saw a lot of people talking about it. Still to this day. Canonizing that guy like he's a saint or something. I mean, for DEI consultants, he certainly was a saint. I mean, he brought in all the money. So much money was made on the back of that dead man in the DEI space. Politicians, corporations, I mean, you want to talk about like an act of transubstantiation to rival anything that takes place in a Catholic church on a Sunday. Turning the death of George Floyd into buco bucks for DEI consultants and administrators and all those things. Oh, man. It is crazy. Cray. Let me back. Oh, yeah. So, U.S. employers have eliminated more than 2,600 jobs with words including diversity or DEI in the titles or descriptions. That accounts for about 13% of the DEI-related jobs that existed in early 2023. At the peak of the hiring boom, NPR is the first to report. You were the first to report this? NPR, I could have told you that prior to the Supreme Court decision in 2023, DEI was going absolute bonkers. From the summer of 2020 through first part of 2023, DEI was all over the place. And then that Supreme Court decision came down. And suddenly, all the big corporations in America said, oh, wait a second. Our diversity programs might make us ineligible for federal funding and could also implicate us in Title VII charges. Oh, I guess we need to stop. Now that boom has shifted firmly into reverse. Tell us why. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. This Sunday, or this past Sunday, May 25th, marked the... this Sunday? Okay, this past Sunday. Marked the 5th anniversary of George Floyd's murder by a white police officer. Oh, is that what killed him? If by white police officer you mean fentanyl overdose, then maybe we're talking about the same person. And the start of a national reckoning over systemic racism. No, it was used to justify a quote-unquote national reckoning over systemic racism. Corporate America rushed to join in. No, corporate America, which had already been practicing DEI for years prior to that, and been pushing it for years prior to that. I have a whole playlist on my channel going back to 2016. Used the advent of that event to further justify their goals. That's all it was. Corporate America rushed to join in. No, they just felt more encouraged to crow about it. That's all it was. Loudly proclaiming that businesses should and would do more to fight discrimination and create more opportunities for workers of all backgrounds. Or they use that event to further encourage and fund their ESG programs to please their corporate overlords in BlackRock and Vanguard and elsewise. But six of one thing, half a dozen of the other. However superficial some of these promises turned out to be, all those billions they promised, they didn't end up in the hands of the DEI consultants. And boy, howdy, were they upset. There was that one interview the lady from Forbes did with one of the DEI guys, and he was practically throwing a tantrum that he had not received his cut of the billions promised in DEI funding from these corporations. I need to find that again. That was pretty funny. By early 2023, U.S. companies employed more than 20,000 people focused on DEI. Wow, how much profit did they generate? How much innovation did they encourage? That was more than double the number of such jobs 5 years earlier, according to Revilio Labs' analysis of 8.8 million employers. But almost as soon as companies had staffed up these DEI teams, they faced a backlash. Again, NPR, I don't know if you know this, there was backlash to DEI before 2020. I know. From conservative influencers, activists, lawyers, and state and federal officials. Ooh, by federal officials, do you mean the Supreme Court of the United States by any chance? These critics argue that DEI is itself discriminatory and that employers have added barriers for white people, especially white men, to get jobs or promotions even if they are the most qualified candidates. Well, is that or is that not true? The DEI backlash really started gaining steam in 2023 when the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action at colleges and universities. That same year, Bud Light lost more than $1 billion in sales due to a conservative boycott after it hired a transgender influencer for a brief promotional video. Okay, I'm not a journalism student, but let's take this paragraph here as just a wonderful example of NPR's conflation of events. Okay, we have two sentences in this paragraph that summarize two different, let's say historical at this point, events. What does one have to do with the other? This is your Jeopardy quiz music going off. What does one have to do with the other? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You so stupid. Okay? Boy, NPR is currently being targeted for losing funding, and they're suing the Trump administration back for the threat of losing funding. I can't imagine why NPR might be not a very popular entity right now. I'm inclined not to continue reading this article because this is one of the stupidest paragraphs. Well, maybe not I've read ever, but at least because I've read a lot of Chris Cillizza, but at least this week. Talk about compare and contrast. That makes me angry on an intellectual level. That makes me angry. So we talk about, whoops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Pardon me. We talk about the Supreme Court decision in 2023 regarding the removal of affirmative action. And then we talk about the Bud Light boycott. And what leads in after that? Then. Okay, so in 2023, 2+ years before Trump became president, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. There was a boycott, a consumer boycott against Bud Light. Then, within hours of his second inauguration, apparently nothing took place in the course of 2024. But all these things are somehow related one to another. Okay. Then, within hours of his second inauguration, Trump ramped up the attacks with his executive orders. Yes, the Supreme Court finally deciding that racially charged admission processes in colleges and universities actually does violate established civil rights law. And a purely grassroots consumer boycott of a beer, these things are the exact same as attacks. Ramped up the attacks. These are attacks, guys. These are attacks on DEI. A boycott against Bud Light is an attack on DEI, guys. Okay, I'm not reading this anymore. NPR is trash. NPR is garbage. That insults me. That entire chain of logic absolutely insults me. And I'm not going to put up with it. Simon Wilkins, people against DEI are transphobic. I have the feeling that that's the message they're trying to convey. Yeah, no, you may be correct. You may be correct. Advocates Diablo, that's a specious comparison if I've ever seen one. Specious. Good word. Good word. Non-playable radio, yeah. Or, what did I call it? Nonsense progressive rhetoric or something. I think it was nonsensical progressive rhetoric. I think that's what I called NPR for the TED Excellence, where the future CEO at that time showed up. Yeah. Ames S, the music scribe uses in the background, is very relaxing. Well, I needed to, act as counterpoint to the likely frustration I'm going to feel reading the articles that I read. Yes, this is a It's a combination of just a whole bunch of piano tracks I found on YouTube's audio library, copyright-free and royalty-free music that YouTube provides to creators. And I just found about 4 or 5 different jazzy, soft piano compilations and just smooshed them together. So I have one long track of comforting piano music. And Luna says, pretty sure the Bud Light thing is still going. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't drink beer, so I don't know. But I would not be surprised. Once you've told your entire consumer demographic that you suck, I mean, Marvel and Disney are only kind of now learning this lesson after several years of telling all their core fan bases that they suck. But man, beer drinkers... Tell you what, you tell all the frat boys, yeah, this isn't the beer for you. They'll be like, okay, we do have other options. Let's see, what else do we want to do? I got one more here. One more story. This is The Conversation. No, don't look for Gene Hackman here. This is The Conversation from Yahoo News. Conservative opponents of DEI may not be as colorblind as they claim. Oh my gosh. Let's find out, guys. Let's find out. And this is written by 1, 2, 3 authors. All right, boy, 3 authors from 2 different universities. This better be good. Critics of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, hey, I'm one of those, commonly referred to by the acronym DEI. Well, I mean, DEI is, but critics aren't. Anyway, are increasingly using boycotts and bans to fight against their use. I don't know that I don't know that I have ever actively boycotted anything in particular because of DEI. I'm trying to think. Because, I mean, it was so invested into so many different things, it was practically unavoidable. But anyway, people often argue that this anti-DEI backlash is motivated by race-neutral concerns. For example, that DEI practices are irrelevant to work performance or are too political. Well, show me the poster child company where DEI is the reason that innovation increased, profits increased, and so on. I've been waiting for 9 years for that. I keep being told, and then I keep being pointed to McKinsey studies. But our research published in 2024 in the peer-reviewed Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology suggests that conservative critiques of DEI often boil down to one thing: anti-black racism. Well, obviously. Obviously. I mean, when everybody's pointing to remove any assessment of people on the basis of their race, when the Supreme Court is doing away with affirmative action that elevated people on the basis of their race, obviously it's anti-black racism. Obviously. As psychology researchers, we wanted to understand why people react to DEI the way that they do. Well, okay, I'll explain it to you real quick there. I was taught when I was a child that treating people differently on the basis of their race was wrong. I was shown, at the time, because I was like 6 years old, sitting in my first grade class when the teacher rolled out the TV on the stand with the VCR underneath it, and she put in the tape, and it played all these old news footage reels of the riots in the South, and the fire hoses, and the dogs, and all the scary people doing scary things to other people who didn't seem to be doing anything else except being themselves. Seeing videos of little schoolgirls being shouted at and screamed at by people just because she was walking into a school. I saw these things as a little kid, and I said to myself, that's mean. And I know it sounds rudimentary, but it is rudimentary. It's mean. It's wrong. It's not fair. And that's how I learned, if I didn't need any evidence previously, that it is wrong and stupid and mean to treat people badly for no other reason than they look different. So when I grew up into the adult that I am, and some 9 years ago or a little bit more, when I started seeing businesses and schools and other places saying, oh yeah, we need to do this, that, and the other to increase our population of people on the basis of their race. We need people to be able to see themselves in their leaders. You know, we need to have more teachers of color in our school. We need to have less white people on boards of directors, and on and on and on. And almost never did I hear someone say, we need to have non-qualified people out and qualified people in. That was not the basis of assessment. That was not the line of demarcation, merit, ability, experience, skill. No, it was race. And I was being told that race needed to be used as evaluation by people who said that they weren't racist, that they were actually fighting racism by doing this. And that's when my brain broke. That's when my brain broke. Some 10 years ago now. So that's why. So psychology researchers, that's my explanation to why I react to DEI the way that I have. As psychology researchers, we wanted to understand why people react to DEI the way that they do, so we recruited more than 1,000 people to take part in 3 related studies. Okay, how did you decide upon these 1,000 people? For each study, we measured participants' conservatism on a 7-point scale ranging from extremely liberal to extremely conservative. Single-item measures such as this are often used by researchers. Single-item measures such as this are often used by researchers. So, one metric. Okay. We also measured participants' anti-black racism using the symbolic racism scale, which is a well-validated and commonly used measure of anti-black racism. The symbolic racism scale. There's a hyperlink here. What is the symbolic racism scale? It leads to an abstract. I'm assuming I have to pay to be able to read this thing. Okay, this is off screen, but I'm just going to read the first paragraph or so of this. This was first published in December of 2002. That's 2002, not 2022. So this is over 2 decades old now. The concept of symbolic racism was originally proposed 30 years ago. Okay, so this was published in 2002, but it was actually something that was derived in the 80s. Okay. Much research has been done, and the society itself has changed. Actually, no, 70s, pardon me. Yet many of the original items measuring symbolic racism remains in use. The primary objective of this paper is to present and evaluate an updated scale of symbolic racism. The scale proves to be reliable and internally coherent. Well, I mean, if you say so. It has discriminant validity. It has discriminant validity, being distinctively different from both older forms of racial attitudes and political conservatism, although with a base in both. Because obviously political liberalism could not have any kind of racial discrimination in it. It has predictive validity, explaining whites' racial policy preferences considerably better than do traditional racial attitudes or political predispositions. Evidence is presented of its usefulness for both college student and general adult population samples, as well as for minority populations. Data using this scale contradict several critiques of the symbolic racism construct concerning the consistency of its conceptualization and measurement, the coherence of the symbolic racism belief system, possible artifacts in its influence over whites' racial policy preferences, and its differentiation from non-racial conservatism and old-fashioned racism. You know, I'm not much of a college student anymore, but reading that sure sounds like you immediately associate conservatism with being racist. But, okay. How we did our work. In the first study, we asked participants to read a job advertisement from either a company that emphasizes DEI or a company that emphasized teamwork and good professional relationships. Okay, I mean, there is a distinct difference between those two things. Then, participants rated their interest in the job and how fair they thought the company was. In later studies, they also indicated how well they thought they'd fit in. Okay, and wherein any of that is a racial component? I don't know. We found that participants who scored higher on our measure of conservatism expressed significantly less interest in pursuing a job at the company promoting DEI and viewed it as less fair compared with the company promoting teamwork. Well, in my experience, that would be an accurate assessment. What does that have to do with race? We then added symbolic racism to our statistical model. What does that mean? Once we did that, our measure of conservatism no longer predicted job interest or perceived fairness in the pro-DEI company condition. In other words, symbolic racism, which you still haven't described what that is, symbolic racism accounted for the effect of conservatism on outcomes in the DEI condition. This suggests that conservative participants' reactions to DEI aren't independent from symbolic racism.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
So, let me see if I understand this. You took a bunch of people, you estimated how conservative they are based on some process you're not describing, but just on a point system. Okay. You asked them to evaluate what they thought of two different advertisements from two different companies, one that emphasized DEI and one that emphasized teamwork and good professional relationships. And you took all of that and you threw it into a magic box called symbolic racism, and zipto facto, what came out was, haha, conservatives are racist. And obviously their racism is towards black people. How long does this nonsense go? Holy cow. Okay, that moves into another article. That... like... Really, guys? Really? We expanded on these findings in our following studies. I bet you did. I bet you did. When you take everything and put it into a magic box with a defined outcome to satisfy your own predispositions against conservatives, I imagine. In the second study, participants were randomly assigned to read descriptions of similar pro-DEI or pro-teamwork companies. Additionally, half of the participants were told why the organization supported either DEI or teamwork, and the other half were not. Okay. We found that participants who scored higher on conservatism, expressed less interest in applying for a job at the pro-DEI company and viewed it as being less fair, regardless of whether DEI or teamwork was clearly tied to job-related criteria. Thus, anti-black racism, everyone. I mean, there you go. We estimated statistical models similar to the ones we built in the first study. Of course you did. And we again found, it's amazing I know, that when we added symbolic racism to our statistical model, negative views of the DEI company disappeared. Thus, negative reactions to the pro-DEI organization seemed to reflect race-related rather than job-related concerns, because once we applied our own pre-built lens to otherwise abstract or ambiguous information, we found racism. Okay, I'm done. NPR and Yahoo News' The Conversation. Yeah, that wasn't a conversation. That was not a conversation. Oh my gosh. Guys, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's symbol. Okay, and you know, these were 3 university psychology researchers. And in the course of this article, they didn't even bother to describe what symbolic racism is or how it works. And even in the abstract they linked to, the abstract did not tell us what it is or how it works. But rest assured, guys, rest assured, if you take totally disconnected information and you apply it to a racial lens with a preconceived outcome, you'll find racism. I know, witchfinder generals everywhere unite. Advocates Diablo, just replace the word symbolic with covert and it will make sense as much as it can. That's a good point. That's good, but covert racism, symbolic, yeah, okay. I'll keep that in mind for the future, yeah, because it's all about word games. All about word games. JB, it's not your guy. Oh, sorry, I'm not your guy friend. I'm your friend buddy. I'm not your buddy guy. Oh, man. That was nuts. Mike Savage, yes, they did equate racism with conservative. Yeah, just immediately. If you're conservative, you see, your measure of conservatism is just a metric of how racist you are. And we're not going to say that's how we already think of it. We're not going to put any liberal. Did they have a control group? Did they test a different group for liberalism? No. If they found that some measure of liberal participants also agreed with the conservatives, would they tell us? Probably not. Some Nemnial Nation, I propose we play Boggle instead. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a Boggle game. I do have a Ouija board. I can ask a question sometimes, and sometimes it gives me answers. Answers that probably come from my subconscious. Kind of like what our psychology researchers did themselves. But, speaking of subconscious, did you know I have a Discord server? I have a Discord server. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, there's a link to the Discord server in the chat right now. All you have to do is click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, have watched the show, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is symbolic racism. Just say hello, symbolic racism, and I'll know that you watched the show. Otherwise, everybody, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the morning, tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, at 9:05 a.m. Pacific Time, noon 05 p.m. Eastern Time, where I'm sure we'll talk about the Hollywood fallout from the box office over the Memorial Day weekend from Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible, and we'll probably talk about Avengers and who knows what. All types of movie stuff and genre news and everything. Mostly by people that know a lot more about it than I do. I'm just the hanger-on fanboy. That's my function there. And to ask stupid questions sometimes. That's basically what I do. Also, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. So that's all I've got to plug as far as that goes. Bill S. Preston Esquire, speak melon and enter. Sure. You can either say symbolic racism or say melon. There you go. Just say hello, melon, and I'll also know that you watched the show. We got all types of secret words here. Over on the Discord server, if you come across an interesting tidbit about DEI going on in your territory or find a story that you think I might find interesting as well, be sure to pop it into the DEI Deathwatch group or chat room or whatever they call it over there. Channel, yeah. And elsewise, yeah, I think that's about it. Trying to think if I had anything else to announce. Well, I do, but I can't talk about it yet. Actually, I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it at all. I gotta clarify that with people, because there's a thing that I'm going to be doing in the near future, but I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. I know, I'm being a big tease, but that was kind of the point in the first place. If I do find out I can talk about it, you'll be the first to know. Well, aside from me, because I'll have to be the first to know. Also, was here. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do, pardon me. Everybody who donated, either to myself or, again, guys, to the fundraiser at the top of the chat box, please, please, please take a look at Angela Arriaga's fundraiser. She just needs $130 some odd, and she can start the wheels in motion for her home-based business to start the certification process and all that good stuff. So please take a look at that when you have the opportunity and share those out on social media if you are able. Otherwise, everyone, thank you for joining me. Hope you have a good rest of your Tuesday. Hope you have a good rest of the week in general. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.